Good morning. Here I am in my Elsewhere studio. I'm finishing off an illustration for book 3 and for the exhibition that's happening in, 2 weeks' time now. And yeah, I'm just going to get on with that. But this is, before I do, this is a sycamore herder. It's a watercolour and pen and ink that's in book 2. And so lots of things going on. In fact, if I just put this out, we'll have a look at that. He's in black and white in the book, but I'm watercolouring today, watercolour and pen and ink. So that's where I'm at. And the sycamore herder, this is book 2. He be in here, conical mountains, and all of those things. So I'm a writer, illustrator, and I love playing with the layout. It goes all the way across the page to the next page, kind of like that. And so that's Rameshah, leader of the uprising. And I was just looking for that illustration. I should have known where it was, but I don't. Anyway, I am illustrating live this morning because I've got this piece to complete. I hope you like. I'm making a short film here, about 30 minutes, for the realms of Elsewhere. You're passing by. I'll be nattering a bit. I'm considering what I'm doing with this piece, which is nearly complete. Just need a bit more light, I think. Yeah. So this is a live movie. Just want to get a bit more colour in there. When I go around my garden, I have a lot of flowers. And this year has been really good for the abutilon, which I really like. And it's we'd had some people that we knew who had an amazing abutilon. And I thought, how do you do that? How do you get it that amazingly big? Anyway, this year I discovered how. I kept it watered in the hottest, driest spells, and it paid back by creating the most extraordinary amount of flowers. And they are very, I suppose for me anyway, they are very fairy-like. Love them. As a plant, you can do things with them, get them to become something quite easily, and play with how they might look. And maybe they go through transitions. I do find when I'm working that I want to stay fluid to what might happen on the page, because in that way it's not so much, I don't know whether maybe it's happy accidents, not sure, but I do like to play with the watercolour and just see what's missing, just see if I can, without planning it, see if that will work. And it's the way I think my brain functions, that I prefer to work with the accidents. Of course, with watercolour, there is that thing of the happy accident. Wash the little bits of white or cream paper that gets left as highlights, or just become highlights because, or you use wax resist sometimes, and you paint that on areas that you don't want the white to be lost or the background paper colour to be lost. And then you work with it afterwards, see what's going to happen. So I'm mixing violet initially with a crimson and then some sunshine yellow, just to get some of the initial colours in there. And I'm going to drop in a little bit more of the crimson and see how that takes to it. And I'll let that dry and I'll come back with the pen just to work on it a bit, because it feels a bit, when you put the water on, it just takes the edge off the illustration a bit. But there, it's really nice just to let it develop on the page. I can't like working this way around where it's going in book 3 as an illustration, and book 5 as a reminder of how the children of the Empire dream about the clever little watch, which is what's being carried here. In book 3, the Merchant of Storms has dropped the watch. I won't say why, because it's a spoiler. He drops the clever little watch that he's been using to bend time to his will, so that he can be in 2 places at the same time and do terrible things, I should say. And when it's described as hitting the deck of his ship, the Sire of Cilician, I basically just described that it struck the deck and rolled away from his grasp. And I don't refer to it again because 2 other far more important at that moment things are happening. The master key that opens up the 13 cups that carry the shattered stone of destiny. He's in search of those, and he knows he's close to the last one and obtaining what he wants. He also knows that he has now got in his possession, the Black Book, written by Alathine, the great scribe, which holds many secrets in it, a little bit like Nostradamus had secrets in the things that he wrote about the future, and the merchant wants those secrets. So he doesn't want to think about the watch. He doesn't need the watch anymore. He's stolen the time he needs. So it strikes the deck and rolls away, leaving the narrative, as I said. And in my imagination, I imagined what happened next when I came back as a writer to the moment and I was editing it. I was thinking, so what happened to the watch? I know I wanted to come back into the narrative in 2 books' time, but what actually happened to it? So I sat down with my back against a tree in my favourite forest and just listened to the birds singing and considered the moment. Just shut my eyes and did as I do as a storyteller. I entered the moment. And as an oral storyteller for 30 years, what you do is you enter a moment of a story that you're telling or working on. And you literally become the story. You're not narrating it anymore. You're not telling the story. You're in the place as if it exists somewhere. I find that concept interesting. So I'm in the words which have become a landscape, if that makes sense. And when that happens, everything is happening. It's a bit like you walking into a room where there's a party going on and you don't know anyone. In that room, there are lots of things going on all at once. And when you do this process, even though we may say it's not a real moment, There isn't a room full of people, but is there? So, or not. So there I am, watching the watch rolling across the deck. Somebody scoops it up, and then others scoop bits up, and they end up in this tree, this branch. Now, the clever little watch is one of the 7 watches of the Keeper of Time, and it has many gadgets on it. It is very, very clever. And these are some of the bits. The actual clock face itself, the actual main face, is this piece here. It's very detailed. But when you press that circle, the one on the right, it compresses and then pops up on a long rod. And you pull it out, and then you can see a hole where the rod was. And if you look inside the hole, you can see inside the watch. And the person doing that will see that actually, a bit like, let's say, the TARDIS, Doctor Who's TARDIS, there's much more inside than is outside. And it's like a small room of mechanisms ticking and turning and spinning and clicking and this way and that. And that's how it works. So when it shattered, when it hit the deck and rolled across the deck, it fell into hundreds of pieces. And the children here, who we can see, are walking across this branch with fairy people too, with carrying the many pieces of the clever little watch. So I watched this, literally watched this unfolding, and didn't really want to interact with it. I just wanted to watch it. I was amazed at how complicated the watch was, because I'd only drawn it from the outside. I was also amazed at how many people, for want of a better word, fairy people, elementals, appeared to pick up the pieces, and that there were children there. So I began to write in my head what I was watching, and that these children had come out of dreams, that they were asleep when they were woken. Come help, come help, come us now, we have to go quick, for the watch is rolling, and there's not enough of us. And they were taken from their dreams and landed on the deck, all in an instant as it was still rolling. There were fairy folk, as we can see, and there were children, half asleep, half awake, half still in a dream, 3 halves of them. And one by one, quick as you like, they scooped up bits of this shattered, clever little watch and started to carry it across, I suppose I might call it a foil, nature helping them to escape that terrible moment when the Cyrus Cilician crashed into the island. The watch fell from the hand of the merchant, and we end up with these pieces. So it's all going on very quickly. But as I said, that feeling you get when you go into a room, and you know there's lots of people in there, and there's lots of conversations going on, and you know that, even though you don't know what the conversations are. You know the room is full. And it's just like this. I knew at once that there were lots of them helping. They were all moving at once to save the watch, for it was a very important watch. Although it had been in the hands of the Merchant of Storms, it now needed to return to the uprising. And it would have so much knowledge about the merchant as well. So that's where I got to. And I thought, as I leant against a tree, that I need to turn that into an illustration. That's got to be in the book. So that's what I'm doing now. Exhibition's 2 weeks away, and I'm doing half of the illustration for it. And then I'll get it printed black and white as well, and paint the whole, both halves, during the exhibition. So there. So one way or another, we find ourselves in this magic moment. The tripping of light, coming and the going, the tipping. I'm just wondering when they get to the end of the illustration, but in this case, to the end of the branch, it's tipping over here. At what point what happens then? I wonder. Whatever happens then. And I got a little bit of gold bits here, which I think I may paint gold. But I'm going to do the leaves first. I have a number of stories in my book where I've got fairy folk counting leaves in the spring to welcome them back, in the autumn to wish them farewell, and they sit in the trees and count them one by one before dropping them on the ground or letting them go into the wind. I like the concept. So those same fairy folk who are used to working fast and quick, the wind in the branches, are here helping out as quick as they can to capture the pieces of the clever little watch. And what I will be doing is I'll go back to the text, and when I finish this part of the illustration today, I'll make a film about it, about the story, with the camera sliding over the piece, just very quietly. It's one of the nice things about making films, is that you have a lot of consideration time to allow something. Actually, I've just had a thought. That's an interesting thought. So around my fairy people, there is blue to indicate, to illustrate energy. But I'm just wondering whether it might be quite interesting that around the leaves, nature, there is green instead. I wonder. It's nothing like going out on a limb. So I'm adding a little bit of crimson to the green. Apparently this year is going to be a really good autumn. I was in an arboretum near Evesham about a month ago, apparently a month early, too early. And they were saying it's going to be a riot of colour this year because of the chemical changes that are encouraged by a certain amount of sunshine in the early stages of the leaf and its growth. I just like to think it's a beautiful autumn, to be honest. But that's what they were saying. So yeah, perhaps I ought to go back. Yeah. So I've started doing more lives on YouTube, as I do a lot on TikTok, which I love to do, and then make films for those as well. Share my books. If you have any comments, you can always put them in the comment box, and I will respond. There are this book, they're all the same size there, 9x6 illustrated, and on the back of each of the first three are early illustrations. That's 19 illustration that I did in 1977, and this is the first book, The Hidden Destiny, with an illustration that I did in 77, 78. watercolour. So I've been doing this a long time. So I'm having a little think here, wondering what would happen if I did that. Interesting. It's very subtle. Perhaps too subtle. Interesting indeed. I'm not sure. So, because I've got a blueness around the fairy folk, I'm just wondering if the leaves, if I bleed a colour off the leaf, whether that might work to bring it to life as well. Give it an energy. I simply do not know. So I've been, I started as a sculptor in 1977. And I had drawn a map of a world in 1977, fantastical realms. I've been in college for 4 years as a fashion textile designer, and it wasn't what I was going to do. I just did not want to do it. So I decided that I'd go back to square one. I loved sculpting at school, so I thought I'll sculpt my words. I can't write them. I'm dyslexic. I can't write them. What I'll do is I'll sculpt them in porcelain. So I got very determined and got used to working with porcelain. Lots of people bought the work around the world. People became collectors, and the map became like the harbour. Actually, it does work green. That's interesting. That is really interesting. Okay. Yeah, so the map that I'd drawn became the harbour for all my work. It became the place I could drop anchor and relate it to that world. So in 2012, when the map was resurfaced and talked about, I was asked if I would like now to write the stories, because I'd been a storyteller by then for 25 years. So I went back to the map and started writing the book, or what now has become known as the Books of Elsewhere. Creating that world wasn't difficult because so much had been created in clay over many years. But what was going to be difficult is me learning to be a writer. How could I do that? I had a lot of learning to do because dyslexics tend to learn strangely. So I just started and I wrote, and sometimes I'd write 4,000 or 5,000 words in a day, morning session. And eventually I wrote what turned out to be 3 books over the period of 4 years. Somewhere in the region of 1 million words. And they became the basis of the first trilogy, which is now being published. And at some point or other, I started to illustrate it and create new maps as well to help identify my world, its location, its distances from one thing to another. How far is it from the island of the Nargs, let's say, seafarers and warriors? How far is it from there to Porthstromic, the land of magic, once anyway? Now the magic has been stolen. So, yeah. returning to the writing, to the map, and writing became a fundamental driving force. It's taken a long time because that was 2012, but now I've written book 4, published 1 and 2. Book 3 will be out in the spring. It's written, but it's got to be edited. It's being edited and it's got to be proofed, so that's cool. Yeah, that's cool. There. Yeah, you can see what I'm doing a little better. So I'm getting a sense of the green underneath the trees influence, and I realise that I possibly need to remove that gap. So I'm just going to do this. I love drawing freehand. It just works for me. I've got the curve going on in these there. Just take the weight off the pen. Put some veins in. There. It's better. And then just going to need a little bit more there. Same with this one. This is an 03 because it's quite small. Well, I say quite small. It's as small as it gets. As far as I know, I don't think you can get any smaller than that. Tiny little end. So, yeah, just take the weight off. And I'm just going to do that. Scoot that around there. Give that a full branch look. There. I think that's cool. Just need to fill that in. Give that a feeling. And I'll put a little bit of crimson in there as well. Not too much, but enough. Just going to bleed that in a bit. That's it. And then I'm going to get the green. This is Viridian and Sunshine Yellow mixing together. Just take a little bit of the edge off here. So around the fairy folk, I've put the blue wash to indicate energy or magic. They give off that, that's what they give off. And painting it seems obvious now. Didn't used to do that. I wonder what was missing. Life's a learning curve, and it's always worth keeping your mind open to possibility, because you don't know it all. Certainly don't know it all. So the experience turns into wisdom in the end. Wisdom turns into experience, turns into knowledge, knowledge turns into wisdom. Then you have a different view of a situation. So I kind of like that now. That's good. I'm wondering whether I should do this too. Which I think I should. Yeah, very interesting. So when I first did this with the the fairies in a painting only about five weeks ago. I really wondered if it worked, but actually I really like just doing a bleed colour over the edges of something. I don't do it all the time, but certainly with fairies I do. I wouldn't do it with elves, for instance, and I wouldn't do it with goblins or trolls or hill giants or any of them, but with fairy folk I certainly feel it's right. But I couldn't tell you why. So I'll let that water dry. There. Yep, I think that's really good. Cool. I'm on my way. Thank you for being here. Ooh, Millie's asked me a question. I better answer that before I go. So, Millie. There. Excuse me a minute, because I haven't done this before. Not on this set, I haven't. She says, I love the paint. What type is it? Well, it's watercolour. It's a very expensive range, but, you know, I don't think you should use watercolour if you don't use some good ones. Only because they have a transparency about them. And when you have that, what you want to do, if you have a really good quality watercolour paint, basically what happens is that the paint itself, good quality paint, will really show when you're using it as a proper watercolour.